This was brought to you by Franklin County Internet Gaming Society on YouTube and Facebook.
The raging red I wept hellfire tears. Eadwall, haughty of the steely heart, gazed into the heart of the inferno. The fiery portal returned the look, undaunted, uncaring. Chanting fiends surrounded and bolstered the portal's appalling intrusion. Summoned by the dire cabal, the demons were immune to the threats of mortal steel and magic. With each syllable they repeated, the searing aperture yawned wider. But Eadwall had something that the dire cabal had not reckoned on. He of the steely heart flipped back his cloak, revealed in grip a dull black blade, scribed with runes of grim promise. Once a blade of storied guile and soul-swallowing repute, it was now a blade redeemed. It was Exordius. White light streamed from Exordius's edges, and rays of brilliant clarity flooded from the jewel in its pommel. The demons flinched, and their chant faltered, but resumed a moment later. After all, what need had they to fear a mortal blade? While they maintained their right, they were immune to the cuts and insults of all weapons, even those consecrated by the powers of good. But the dull black blade had a legacy behind it, a convoluted story of loss and gain, transformation and redemption. Exordius's powers were not confined to the merely mortal, or even the merely good. Eadwall waded in, and as the slaughter began, the dull black blade began to glow as it drank in the lives of the foulest spirits of the abyss. Such is the power of a weapon of legacy. More than meets the eye. Mythic history is replete with tales of singular weapons of legendary champions, magic staffs of remarkable heritage, and rings that grant powers undreamed by most mortals. Such wonders stand in ability as far above standard magic items as a magic item surpasses its mundane counterpart. A ring of feather falling is a handy thing to have, but few would not give it up for bright evening star, whose radiance illuminates the darkness and sears its enemies. And who wouldn't trade a +1 crossbow for the chance to wield Flamecaster's bolt, the storied weapon prized for its lethal sway over fire? Finding these items of legacy, forged in the heat of momentous events and wielded by legendary heroes, is just the first step. Prospective wielders must also learn how to unlock their powers before using them to their fullest capacity. What's inside? Weapons of Legacy describes magic items that are more than what they seem, granting great power to those who can discover their nature. The first chapters present the basic rules for items of Legacy, as well as information for adding them to your campaign. They also detail a variety of options available to characters who wield Legacy items, from feats to spells to a new prestige class. The book then offers 49 fully detailed items of Legacy, including swords, staffs, and 1 drouse items. Full histories of each item are included, along with rituals to unlock their mysterious powers and adventure seeds to introduce them to a campaign. Sections on tailoring the items to a Forgotten Realms or Eberron campaign are also provided in many cases. PMs and players then learn how to create customized items of Legacy as their characters and campaigns evolve, as well as explore a range of variants on the Legacy item rules, such as mutable legacies, epic legacy items, and even monsters that embody legacy abilities. What you need to play. Weapons of Legacy is intended for use in any Dungeons & Dragons game. You will need the 3 D&D core rulebooks, Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, and Monster Manual. In addition, it includes references to material in the Epic Level Handbook, the expanded Psionics Handbook, Complete Adventurer, Complete Warrior, and Races of the Wild, among other supplements. Although possession of any or all these supplements will enhance your enjoyment of this book, they are not strictly necessary. Introduction. 4. 5. Illustration by D. Kovacs. There are thousands of years of epic history over an infinite and expanding stage of worlds and planes. Certain stories still resound with mythical significance. Of those, tales of mighty weapons, relics of exceptional power, and artifacts of previous civilizations are especially potent. Who doesn't thrill to the tale of Excalibur, the sword that can be drawn from the stone only by one worthy to rule? All shudder to think on the soul-drinking blade Stormbringer, and the price that its wielder must pay. So, too, do we read in awe of the One Ring, with its ability to confer on the wearer powers so vast that only those of already exceptional ability can unlock the ring's potential. These are weapons of Legacy. Many are items crafted in a long-ago age when legends walked the mortal world. These mighty tools have since been lost, secreted away, or destroyed, so that now they are no longer within the reach of mortals. Perhaps they are still among us, but unrecognized as the mighty relics once hailed throughout the lands. The world also holds new heroes, who are creating new legends and forging new items of legacy in their telling. What is a weapon of legacy? Weapon of Legacy describes all the items created using the rules in this book, even those that wouldn't normally be described as weapons, such as rings or shields. Usually, this book uses the more general term, item of legacy, or legacy item. An item of legacy has the capacity to grow in power as its wielder advances in level. In Addition, it confers increasingly powerful special abilities on its wielder. That character might carry and treasure the same item over her entire career as a hero or villain. Why not? As her own talents and abilities progress, so too do those of the legacy item, assuming the wielder takes the time to learn its complete history and awaken its quiescent power with the appropriate rituals. As a player character, you could discover or inherit an item of legacy. Initially, it might seem like nothing more than a standard magic item, only when you learn something. 6. Chapter 1: The Legacy. Of its past do you begin to understand that this object has untapped potential. By uncovering the item's full history, you can discover the keys that unlock the item's full power. You might even found your own item of legacy. After all, the player characters are the epic heroes of a campaign, from which arise myths, relics, and weapons of legend. By founding an item of legacy, you gain some degree of control over its abilities, although how you wield it is in the hands of fate and the dungeon master. See Chapter 4, Founding Legacies, for more about this option. Every item of legacy is distinct from the next, and each has its own unique story. Unearthing that story, or creating it, when founding an item of legacy, allows you to gain the full benefits of the item. For example, the story of Excalibur, which appears only when a great hero has need of it, contrasts sharply with that of Stormchaser's Cudgel, whose heritage involves the murder of the weapon's original owner. Solden Cable the Giant Slayer. No matter what items of legacy you eventually discover or create, using such items entails a steep personal cost. The specifics are different for each item, but the costs are always substantial. You must consider the consequences before taking up a legacy item. For most characters, these costs are well worth paying. Why use items of legacy? If you're a DM, items of legacy provide exciting rewards for players whose characters are willing to devote time and energy to learning about your campaign world. To unlock the powers of a legacy item, a player character must learn fabled legends of ancient history and complete rituals of mythic significance. Not only does this require the player to study the backstory of your world, but also provides any number of ready-made adventure hooks for the campaign. If you're a player, a legacy item presents a way of personalizing your character while simultaneously building up her might. By tying her development to one of the great tales of history, your character takes on heroic proportions. Who knows? She might even become more famous than the first owner of the legacy item, unlocking powers of even greater potential. Items of legacy. In your game, as a DM, you might hesitate to introduce these potentially powerful items into your campaign. In this section you will find helpful points, background information, and expanded rules to help you deal with the challenges of legacy items. Introducing legacy items. As with any new addition to your campaign, you must determine how items of legacy fit in. What role, if any, did they play in the history of the campaign world? Why haven't the player characters heard of them before now? Are there any active items of legacy in the world today? Most important, do the PCs, knowingly or unknowingly, possess any legacy items already? PQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQQ Legacy items look similar, and they do share many traits. However, they are distinct from each other and should remain separate entities. Both are extremely powerful, and neither should be considered just another piece of equipment. But an artifact's power can be the hub upon which campaigns spin, while legacy items shake the world less, if only because their abilities are not free to all comers. Of course, the search to discover an item of legacy, or reforge a destroyed one, can still produce exciting and memorable storylines. Artifacts are generally constructed in a distant age using spells and rites that are beyond the ken of present day knowledge. They survive to this day, but the knowledge necessary to duplicate their creation does not. Their abilities are also always available to any would-be wielder, regardless of how much or little knowledge he has of the artifact's history, and do not require costly rituals to unlock. Legacy items are not always lost wonders. Even today, a new legacy might be founded. If one is located, only a dedicated researcher can discover and use its powers, and then only after undergoing one or more legacy rituals. Such items might be more plentiful than artifacts, but because of their hidden nature and forgotten lineage, their true numbers are unknown. 7. The Legacy Chapter 1. Revisionist history. Retroactively changing your campaign's history is the easiest way to incorporate legacy items into your game. They have always been a part of the world. Up to now, though, the PCs either hadn't encountered a legacy item, or they never realized that the undistinguished +1 longsword wielded by the fighter actually has a long and storied history. Another way to accomplish this goal is to reintroduce formerly encountered NPCs and monsters. They reappear, wielding the same signature items or weapons. This time, these items are far more powerful in the foe's hands. For example, the half-orc assassin Tel tries once again to fulfill his contract on one of the PCs after having failed in an earlier attempt. Tel still wields his signature ebony blackbow, but this time around, it looses a shaft of utter darkness, death wrapped in a shadow. This bow is the same weapon, but Tel has unlocked an ability it once conferred upon a previous wielder. Alternatively, Tel was involved in some momentous event, one that the PCs perhaps have heard of, that allowed him to imbue his favorite weapon of assassination with legacy abilities. Either way, the PC's ongoing interaction with Tel and his bow can be a vehicle for introducing legacy items to your campaign. First founding. Maybe your PCs haven't heard of legacy items before because they are among the first to found such mighty creations. The following are some possibilities for explaining why this is so. The world is young. The PCs are its earliest heroes, who will form the basis of legends, and of legendary items, in future ages. An invasion, revolution, or other upheaval changes the world forever. The appearance of legacy items is just one of many momentous events at this time. The PCs themselves might be responsible for setting the change in motion, perhaps on concluding a great quest or fulfilling a long-term story arc, or they might have nothing to do with it but suddenly discover or found legacy items. Since legacy items are not easy to come by, a PC founds one instead. Founding a legacy requires a specific impetus. This could be sponsorship by an NPC with a different legacy item, to get the PC wielder on the right track, or completion of a grand quest, to discover the item or learn a piece of history necessary to perform a least ritual to unlock an existing item's legacy. The first characters to wield items of legacy have new abilities to explore, but they must first figure out how to unlock those abilities. They have to research the history of their legacy items, or discover a trove of relevant information from a time when larger-than-life heroes walked the world wielding mythical weapons. Designing legacy adventures. Once you've decided to include legacy items in your campaign, you aren't required to make all adventures contain some seed of legacy influence from that point on. For the most part, you need not change your game style at all. You don't even have to decide ahead of time if a particular magic item found in the course of adventuring is really a legacy item. Legacy abilities become available only after an item's wielder discovers its history and further performs a ritual to unlock them. Thus, you enjoy the luxury of deciding when to reveal the item, say, the fighter's magic bat leaks, as something more. For instance, you could have the party discover an old book containing an illustration of some important personage of your carrying an identical-looking axe that blazes with power. Dropping this clue should make the fighter curious enough to try finding out more about his axe, possibly discovering that it once had great powers. Further clues garnered in the course of his investigation suggest that he could reawaken those powers with a proper ritual. Discovering a legacy item. A blunt, if simplistic, assessment of the Dungeons and Dragons game is that it's all about the stuff. Whatever other challenges it might offer or what skills the PCs must draw on to succeed, every adventure includes treasure. It's the all-important reward that coaxes every would-be adventurer from the docile life of the commoner to one of exploration and glory. From time to time, an item of magical power is unearthed from an age-old tomb or pried from the bloody hand of a finally vanquished nemesis. These are climactic moments, and the adventurers distribute such items among themselves with excitement and wonder. The Raging Red. I wept
This
hellfire
was brought to you by Franklin County Internet Gaming Society on YouTube and Facebook. Roger Hansen on Patreon, and Gaming with Infamous on Discord. Thanks for stopping by. Listen to our podcast on any of these platforms: Anchor, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify. Support us on Patreon, and check us out on Discord. All the links can be found in the video description below. We thank you for your participation. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. We love feedback.